All right, so I'm going to do a quick video here. I've talked before about how we use a wide stance or a sumo stance. Let me see if I can find the video here. Um, if you notice in our gym, we do a lot of wide stance, or what we call sumo stance deadlifting. We also do a really wide stance squat onto a box. The reason why we do that is because sports, here it is, you can see right here my screen, wide sumo stands for athletes for squats and deadlifts. You can go back and watch that, but that just kind of gives you general idea of how we set up and kind of why we do it. But I wanted to be a little bit more specific today and talk about why we use that wide stance and how it relates to wrestlers. So if you notice, we do a ton of that type of stance. Um, The reason why we do it is because it builds the hips. So when you're narrow in your stance, you use a lot more quad. So you're going to use your quads more. You're not going to use your hamstrings as much. You're not going to use your glutes and your hips and your back. So we do that wide stance because it gets into our hips more, and that's where sports are played. Sports are played with the hips. So a lot of coaches think that you are more narrow when you play sports, but the fact of the matter is, if you break down a lot of their movements, they are in a wide stance. And it's imperative that they can create lateral ground force. So that's why we're in that wide stance. We have to push your feet out to create force in order to stand up with the bar. It creates lateral ground force. Now, if I go over here, let's see here. I just want to look at a few pictures first before we go into some video. But quickly here, some pictures. One of the moms of kids in our gym took like of Rob winning a state championship. This is all from a state championship match. Now, if you notice, where are his feet? Are they underneath his hips? No. And I'm just going to kind of go through these pictures quick, and you'll see a lot more. Are they underneath his hips? No. In fact, the kid that's getting thrown has his feet more narrow. Again, wide feet. Wide feet. I actually haven't even gone through these. I'm just going through these assuming that they're all going to prove my point, and they are, because I've watched a ton of sports and a lot of wrestling in the past few years. Can't really see. Can't really see. But in most sports, the feet being wide is going to be huge. And another thing to talk about is if you train wide, you'll be stronger when you come back narrow. Let's say you wanted to do a narrow squat or conventional deadlift. When you come back to your narrow stance, you'll be stronger from being wide, and it doesn't carry over the opposite way. I kind of touched base on that in the other video I made. But when you start narrow, you're not building your hips. So when you go out wide, you are going to be weaker out there. You're not going to feel as strong. So it's just being wide more often than not is going to be a huge benefit to the athletes. A lot of people ask us why we're wide all the time, so this is kind of why I'm going to going over it. A lot of these pictures, he's on the ground, so. Oh, here's some up. Okay. So if you notice, even in their stance, they aren't going to be they're wide here. Okay, they're not narrow. Their feet aren't underneath their hips. They are wide. They are creating force laterally into the ground on most of these movements. Wide. So right here is a pretty good example. He's wide squatting this kid, basically doing a wide deadlift. On the ground again. But I mean, you pretty much get the point. If you watch these guys, even if they maybe start a little bit narrow, they always get into a wide stance position when they have to, and it's really important. A lot of times the guys are going out of bounds, they're trying to keep 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and they're really wide. You notice this guy, he's wide. So like when they take a shot, I'm trying to see if we can find a picture here of him shooting in. Basically here, so he's shooting in, he's wide, okay? There's no way to shoot in on a guy and take a shot, single or double leg, if you're narrow stance. You have to be wide. Now, let me show you some pictures of how that carries over to lifting. If you notice a lot of our lifts, we're in the same stance. Here's Rob again. Rob's wide. Two guys here. Paulie, wrestler, he's sumo deadlifting there. He's wide. He's nice and wide. Here's Whitworth doing a squat. Look how wide his feet are. Almost the same position as Rob was in when he was lifting that guy up. Same here. Here's Paulie again, maxing out. Wide. Okay, so that wide stance comes up over and over and over again. You have to be wide. You have to be able to create lateral ground force and be strong with your feet out, out away from your hips. Again, we're doing some Zercher pulls here. Zercher pull, he's wide. He's wide. All right, you guys get the point. Let's go to some video. Let's see if I have some video now. I got to go back a little further to find the wrestling stuff from the summer. Let's see. Here's Zercher rack pulls. So if you notice, we're going to get them in a wide stance. One of the other benefits is it also creates mobility. So what we're doing here is we're actually creating mobility in their hips, so they're getting more flexible. And how we do that is we start them with a little bit higher. So if we're pulling from a higher position. If we're squatting to a higher box. And as they become more mobile, we will lower the box or lower the barbell so that it creates more mobility. They're getting lower and lower and lower. If you could think about it, as a wrestler, being able to get all the way down in a really low position down by the ground, pick something off really close to the ground, with your feet really wide, would be very beneficial.
What you're going to see in this video is one of my favorites for wrestlers. It really forces the athletes to use their whole body, their grip, their shoulders, their core, their trunk. It's a lot of back work. See that guy just missed, and then he comes back and does it again, nails it. Really proud of him on that. Before that, we were at 405.
Spread the floor.
He's a sophomore. He hit 455. Nard wasn't going to be outdone. It's 460.
All right, it's freezing up, but you guys get the point. There's a lot of benefit to being wide in your stance with this, and that's why we train out wide. You can see the